Welcome to the House of Ham. I'm Bob WV7W. A little over 2 years ago, I did an interview with Stephen WM7X on taking your ham radio exams online. This has been one of my most popular videos, and I thought it was about time to do an update for 2024. So, without further ado, let's invite Stephen back into the House of Ham for another chat. Stephen, welcome. I think the first thing people will notice is that we're not together in the park like last time. As you're no longer in the Tri Cities, where are you living nowadays?
Well, I'm still in Eastern Washington. However, I'm traveling around now to multiple hamfests and amateur radio groups around the country. Although I still base out of Eastern Washington, it's sure nice to expand the team's efforts to more of a nationwide effort and getting people licensed.
All right. Well, I think this has been an important part of the success of your exam team is that geographic dispersity. And not only doesn't hurt the participation, but it actually helps with both the exam teams as well as the applicant.
It absolutely does. We're meeting people from all over the United States and the world, quite frankly. It's been quite a boon to our test team as well to have volunteer examiners now, not only located in the US, but also in Singapore and even Malawi, Africa.
Wow, that's amazing. So when we did our first video, we were just coming out of the pandemic. And I think a lot of people don't realize that online testing is still very much a thing. Have you seen a decline in online testing since that time?
Massive decline. No, it's been massively improving. Are you kidding?
Yeah,
We're an instant gratification society still. Imagine that. And the ease and convenience of an applicant to take their test remotely during their lunch hour at work, and even for our VE team who doesn't have to travel anywhere or start their vehicles to go to an in-person test session has been an incredible convenience and quite a shot in the arm for the amateur radio hobby.
absolutely. Yeah, I asked that question so we could kind of explain that to the audience, but I mean, I'd seen that, helping you do exams that it definitely doesn't seem like it's declined. So, but I still get questions, that's like, really? I didn't realize I could do a test online, especially some of the older hams. So,
That's
I know there's been quite a bit of change over the past 2 years. What kind of changes has the WM7X team made to better the experience for the test applicants?
Well, as the team lead myself, I now utilize the incredible skills and talents of four additional co-owners of the team who augment with their immense talents our testing program. Because of the massive increase in applicants, it's quite frankly a little too much for one guy to handle. And by spreading out some of our resources and the workload amongst other team co-owners from Maine, Texas, Tennessee, and even Washington State, we've been able to even better serve the applicants and respond accordingly to the increased testing that we've been doing, and even offer all day, impromptu, on demand, instant exam sessions.
Yeah. So, I mean, on average, how many exam sessions are you doing per week now?
Uh, the sessions themselves, at least one a day, however, sometimes two sessions a day. However, each one of these sessions will often have anywhere from 8 to 15 people in them. So rather than individual session counts, we're counting applicants and we're averaging between 300 and 400 applicants every month.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, it's it's just incredible. And now not all of those are new hams. Some of those are hams that are upgrading. But you just think about the vibrance of our hobby and being able to bring this many new hams into the community. Because I'd still say the vast majority of the exams we give are the technician exams for new hams that are never been licensed before.
That's correct. We're averaging about 68 to 71% typically of our exams are brand new licensees, brand new applicants coming into the hobby. Like many of your viewers, hopefully, the remaining test applicants are here for their upgrades. The majority of the remaining 30, roughly percent, are for their general, and we're seeing about 8 to 10% of our applicants testing for their amateur extra. So that's the distribution of the tests that we're administering. However, it's sure a treat to welcome not just brand new ones into the hobby, but help be part of the journey and the upgrades for the other applicants who are coming in, often repeat applicants who we're very familiar with and just excited to see them upgrade their licensing privileges.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I know that a lot of the upgrades are repeat customers. You know, people we've tested for the lower level exams, and they always tend to come back and want to to move on. And I think that's great. That's there again. That's a great boon for the hobby. That not only are we bringing hams in, but if they're upgrading, that means they're probably active in the community and they didn't just take their test and now don't do anything. So I think it's a great benefit to the ham radio community that we're not only bringing them in, but they're staying.
They're not only staying, Bob, but what's really interesting too is we would occasionally invite applicants who have upgraded to general and extra amateur extra class privileges to possibly serve as a volunteer examiner themselves. And although we're still offering that out to many of our applicants, we're finding now that because of the team's fine reputation in the amateur radio community, that folks are specifically now testing with our team in hopes to either be asked or to make themselves available as an amateur radio volunteer examiner,
Right.
which is super cool to be part of not only their entry into ham radio, but then introduce them to the other side of the camera, if you will, and having the fun that we're having in administering the exams for new ones like they were just months prior.
Right. Absolutely. So I want to take a few minutes and talk about how someone goes about taking their tests online. You know, so how do they find those available exam sessions and how do they sign up for them?
Very good question. Extremely good question. And there has been a lot of interest in that. Where to start? An incredible resource is hamstudy.org. All one word,
And you'll see
hamstudy.org.
that right along the bottom here, and it will also be in the description of the video.
Excellent. An incredible resource that's provided by a team, Signal Stuff, out of Utah, who offers this incredible study tool. It's not only a study tool for obtaining your education and getting familiar with the question pool, but it's also the testing environment. It's companion product, exam tools, where we administer the exams from. So hamstudy.org will give you a screen where you can find a session, whether it be an in-person session local to your own area where you reside, or if you prefer to test remotely, which we hope you do, it'll direct you to many of the different online teams as well. And representing WM7X, we'd be flattered to administer your next exam as well for any prospective applicants watching our video today. So hamstudy.org, and the other option would be our own personal website, WM7X.net.
All
There's
right.
a
Well, that link
wealth of
will
information
also,
there.
yep, that link will also be right here as well as down in the description below. So thank you, Stephen. All right. So, what are the requirements to take an online exam as far as what do they need to participate, like hardware and software, and what other things do they need to have with them when they come to that exam session?
After a person registers and funds their exam session, a photo identification is required and a computer with a web camera that's capable of seeing you and hearing you as well. With something as minimum as a Chromebook, even, we've been able to overcome any technical challenges. And to date, we have never had to deny an exam for any technical issues. For every issue that we've ever encountered, we've come up with a solution for it to get you licensed. So a computer running Zoom or capable of running Zoom is preferred. It really enhances your testing experience. However, we're even able to test now on cellular devices, your Android phone or your iPhone. although it takes an extra couple of permissions to set up initially. A huge response has entered the hobby simply because many don't have a computer anymore,
No,
and their
that's
computer sits in their pocket,
yep,
much like mine does.
yep.
So that cell phone has been an incredible advantage to getting people licensed as well.
Excellent. All right. So I've been asked about the FRN, and I don't know if everyone knows that you have to have one before you take the exam. And can you explain what it is and how do you get one?
Absolutely. Years ago, a social security number used to be required on your paperwork. However, because of privacy, the FCC also now has an FRN. It's a federal registration number. You might think of it as your personal identifier with the commission. It's a process that you can go through yourselves prior to registering for an exam. And there's instructions on not only our website, but once you register for your exam at Ham Study, you'll be directed to the FCC's website. A couple of steps have to take place. You set up a CORS account, a simple CORS account that's free of charge. Once you get your account, which only takes minutes, you then register for a brand new FRN, a federal registration number, which is then put onto your application documents for your license in lieu of your social security number. That entire process, though, Bob, takes about 7 to 8 minutes. It's really quite expeditious and one of those hoops that we step through and have applicants step through to maintain their personal privacy.
Right. Gotcha. Gotcha. So you mentioned a minute ago that they have to fund their exam. So it's not free to take the exam. But what does that cost to take an exam today?
There's 14, believe it or not, different volunteer examiner coordinators that are authorized to administer amateur radio tests under the FCC. We currently represent the ARRL, and the current exam fee for them is $15. And there are several payment options, be it PayPal, Square, Zelle, Cash App. Oh boy, there's so many of them anymore. We take just about everything except Bitcoin so far.
All right. Well, that's great. Um, so I've been asked by several people from foreign countries if they can take an SCC exam for a U.S. license, and if so, what's the requirements for them to be able to do that?
Oh, that's another excellent question. And thank you to the viewers who have asked that specific question as well. To register for a CORS account, uh, you register using your city and state and country of residence. However, there are restrictions once you apply for your amateur radio license from the FCC for your United States license that a U.S. address must be listed. Some use post office boxes. Some also have a vacation home in the States that they'll use that address for. It's an address that the FCC requires that you can be contacted at if you ever need to be by the commission. So, yes, we have tested many dozens of applicants from other countries. Some have dual citizenships. It's really quite interesting when we test people in Europe, in Australia, Singapore, even Antarctica. We've had 3 applicants from the ice shelf at a scientific research station. So testing internationally has been quite an advantage. Many of these folks have licenses in their own countries of residence, and they want to augment that with their US license for when they travel to the States as well. So, yes, there are several provisions to administer an exam for somebody residing in a foreign country.
Gotcha. Gotcha. What kind of accommodations can you make for people with disabilities? This is another common question.
Well, those with special needs are special to us as well. We know many people have had to overcome many, many challenges just to frankly study for the exam, let alone have their test administered and even remotely. So our team uh, is very sensitive to the needs of those who are sight impaired, maybe those who are illiterate, those who have a difficult time seeing their screen. Maybe they're not totally blind, but they are sight impaired enough that they can't quite read these questions. We have many provisions to accommodate them, up to and even including us reading the questions to our applicants, reading the options A, B, C, and D and what those are, and waiting for them to respond. If I might share a brief example, a young man with some special needs was still able to utilize a mouse somewhat, but was having great difficulty. We were actually able to answer the questions for that applicant based on the feedback that he gave us verbally, if you will, somewhat completing his answer sheet for him based on what he gave us. And he's now a licensed technician class operator, and overcoming challenges that people have is become somewhat of our specialty. We find it initially is not a challenge or an impedance for them getting licensed, but more of a way for us to think outside the box so that we can still get these folks tested without them having to still leave their home and travel anywhere to take a paper exam.
The important thing though is that they are answering the questions, not you're not giving them the answers. They have to take the test. It's just you're helping them with the mechanics of it. And I think that's great. I did have one viewer ask, because he asked about for people with learning disabilities and if he could have someone help them take the exam by explaining the questions. And I thought that was a little bit like probably not something that you could really do, but I did want to give you the opportunity to talk about that.
Right. I We've been faced with that question before. And although we'd love to be able to interpret a question or explain that question, all of the questions that we ask by way of the exam are taken from the NC question pool. And we're not able to alter that or explain that in any more detail than it's actually stated on the exam. We can read the question, we can emphasize one word in the question, absolutely, to help it make more sense to somebody, but we're not able to alter any of the questions that are being asked, even the answers. When we're doing a verbal exam, we'll give option A, option B, C, and so forth, and they're all stated in the same tone of voice so that there's no emphasis or clues given on any correct or incorrect answer.
Gotcha. Gotcha. So let's talk for a minute about the convenience of remote testing. And you've kind of alluded to it earlier on, but I've had I've received several comments on the video that we did on how far they would have had to have traveled, and in some cases just not even possible. I mean, there's people that have their again disabilities, and those disabilities are such that they're not very mobile. And so, but talk for a minute, not only about, the meeting those special needs, but, just for the average guy that wants to, or gal that wants to take a test on how much more convenient it is as well as it is for the team.
Obviously, not all of us live in a community of 500,000 people with multiple fast food restaurants and hardware stores and conveniences. Many of our applicants are remote where they've expressed that they would have had to drive upwards of 2.5, sometimes 3 hours to get to an in-person test session. I personally, and our team subscribes also to the thought that that's somewhat unfair, especially in this day and age of internet, broadband, video conferencing like you and I are doing right now,
Right.
and the educations people can get, college degrees even, right online. So being able to take that test remotely on sometimes bandwidth that's a little bit challenging because some people still live in the boonies is exciting because they didn't have to go anywhere,
Right. Right.
and nor did the VE team. We often thank our applicants for taking advantage of the provisions of remote testing because not only was it convenient for them, we thank our applicants because we didn't have to go anywhere either ourselves and start our vehicles. So it's really been quite an advantage, and it's encouraging to see that people have that availability to test remotely and not even leave their home.
Right. Right.
In fact, if I might add, the in-person exams compared to the remote exams have a lesser success rate on the technician licenses.
Oh, you mean the pass rate?
Sometimes
You mean it's actually lower in person? There's probably that test anxiety. I can't even talk. There's probably that test anxiety of being in person that you don't get when you're, kind of in your own environment. So,
you hit the nail on the head right there. Absolutely. You're testing in your own home on your own device. You didn't have to drive to a strange area, go into a strange building or basement, and be faced with a volunteer examiner team in front of you. It could be somewhat intimidating for some folks.
well,
And we want
yeah.
to lessen that possibility.
And the other thing with in-person exams, a lot of times there's a bunch of other people taking an exam at the same time, and so not only do you have the distraction of the VE team, which they're going to have on the screen, although they don't have to look at it, they can kind of ignore that. But you don't have all those other people there as well, and I think that really helps.
Absolutely. That taking somebody outside of their home environment does cause a little bit of stress. It does me even somewhat. That's why when we go to the doctor, our blood pressure is a little higher typically. Same thing with these in-person test sessions, although they have their place, and I hope they always are there. The remote provisions really puts people at ease greatly, we have found, and meeting some of these applicants has just been so encouraging. And even the repeat applicants, um, we strive to make the experience not about us, about our applicants, making sure that you're comfortable. We tell you to kick your shoes off and
Yes, you do. I
stay
hear that
away.
all the time.
We do, and we'll even pause if you want to go grab a Diet Coke or Pepsi, um, and take care of business. It's all about convenience and relaxation. Heck, we'll even tell a few dad jokes once in a while, which is just a blast.
So, you mentioned in-person exams, and I know you have done a series of those, but even when you do those, you're still using the exact same testing environment. They're just viewing it on a tablet instead of their own computer.
Absolutely. Where I'm at right now, across the street, there's an 82-year-old man who's studying in person with a organized group, and he just learned that I'm a ham radio operator, and he's anxious to take his test. And I said, well, I might be able to help you with that. He walks with a cane and most often a walker. So I know he's a bit mobility challenged. And doggone it, with the winter months ahead of us soon, I don't want my neighbor falling,
Busting a hip,
injuring
that would be
himself.
bad. Yep.
It would be.
Yep.
And so, how much more pleasant is it going to be for me to walk an iPad over to him, tie on a VE or two like yourself, and test this guy right in the comfort of his own home
Yep.
while we sit back and drink hot tea?
Yep.
It's just really quite pleasant. And what a beautiful introduction for most of our applicants coming into ham radio. Very briefly, when I came into ham radio at an in-person session at a high school gymnasium, I didn't have the best first impression, and I remember that clear as a bell.
Yep.
I'm big on first impressions. We're often, you and I both, as volunteer examiners, people's very first human contact with anybody in the amateur community.
Or the VEs. Yep.
And it's super important to us and every member of our team to make sure you have a beautifully relaxed test session and you're going to return and tell your family and friends about us too.
Yep. Absolutely. So, Stephen, what do you see in the future for the WM7X team? Like, what kind of things are you got on the horizon?
Well, with our networking out of additional volunteer examiners in different countries, presently we're testing 12 hours a day
Wow.
from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. Eastern Time. Adjust those times for your own time zone, of course. We're hoping to expand that in the near future to some overnight exams as well for our overseas applicants, not in the United States, to accommodate their time zones more easily. Because we don't want them tested at 3 o'clock in the morning their time. We'd rather test them at 3 o'clock in the morning our time so that they're more comfortable and relaxed and not tired for their exams. Another feature that our team will be employing very soon is complimentary license renewal assistance.
Yeah, I was gonna. If you hadn't brought it up, I was gonna mention that, and we'll do a future video on that subject all by itself because that really warrants a whole nother discussion, I think, because that's really exciting. It is not the easiest thing in the world to navigate And I know that there's another entity out there that is charging to do that, but you're not going to charge, and we'll talk about that next time we have you on. But
That's right. Exciting things ahead for our team.
that's outstanding. Well, thank you for coming on the show, Stephen. Always a pleasure to chat with you. And I want to thank all of you out there in YouTube land. I hope you found this useful. If you have ideas for other topics, leave me a comment below and we'll try and get Stephen back for another chat. Until next time, 73.